what's going on today, guys? My name's Trey. Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk Hawaii. Now in this video we are going to be focusing specifically on Oahu. I love the other islands. In fact, my wife and I just got back from Big Island. We had an amazing time there. And next week we're actually going to head over to Kauai. So that's one of the perks of living here in the Hawaiian Islands, is you get a chance to island hop. We love doing that so much. But in this video I actually want to talk about a few of the shocks that you'll notice moving from the mainland or moving from any other country here to Hawaii. So let's get into it. Another quick disclaimer I wanted to make is I'm really not trying to piss any locals off, or I'm not trying to anger anybody, or I'm not trying to deter anybody from moving here. I've lived here for a few years now, and so I just wanted to share my experience of living here in Hawaii. This is truly an amazing place. If you can go back through my videos, you will see that I love this place so much. It's a truly amazing place. There's so much to see, there's so much to do. The diversity, people are great. There's so much exciting things happening here in Hawaii, and it's just continuing to grow. And so we will be talking about the positives in a later video, but in this video we're just going to be talking about some of the shocks that you'll notice living here on Oahu. The first shock I want to discuss is traffic. Now, I'm originally from South Florida, so I'm no stranger to traffic. Like, I've experienced I-95, like I've experienced the Dolphin Expressway. Like, I've seen some really bad traffic in my lifetime personally. I've also lived in LA and I've lived in Chicago as well. So I know bad traffic. And when I tell you guys, Oahu has some really bad traffic. And now I don't want that to be a deterrent, but the traffic is pretty bad here on Oahu. Now, to give you guys an idea of what I mean by bad traffic, let's say if you have to commute into town from Ewa Beach. Ewa Beach is about 20 miles from downtown Honolulu, which really should only take you about 30 minutes or so to get there from Ewa. You're gonna hear me saying that a lot in this video. Town automatically means Honolulu. So, for example, if you have to be to town by 8 a.m. and you live in Ewa Beach, it's gonna take you well over an hour to get there. It's really bad. It's bumper to bumper. And on top of that, if you live in Ewa, for example, you have to drive down this road called Fort Weaver, which is horrendous. There's so many lights. The traffic is just really bad. On top of that, there's only one main interstate into downtown Honolulu, and that's called H1. Now, H1 will take you all the way from Kapolei all the way to town, kind of like the Kahala Waialae area. So just to give you an idea, traffic here on Oahu is really bad. Now, like you'll find in a lot of heavily populated states, there are carpool lanes on Oahu as well, which is really cool. And so that kind of helps deter a lot of the bottlenecks that you'll find in a lot of larger cities or a lot of larger metropolitan areas. And so that actually does help. Also, another cool perk is if you drive an electric vehicle, you automatically get to drive in the carpool lane, which is really cool and really exciting. So I would try to carpool as much as you can, because driving here, especially if you live out on the west side, is really bad. The next biggest shock that you'll notice living here on Oahu is the construction. Sorry guys, we had a little bit of technical difficulties. This is my son Golden. He just woke up from his nap, so I didn't want to leave him all alone in there. So he's gonna be in the rest of this video with us. So back to the construction. There's just so much construction all over the island, literally from the west side to the windward side to town. If you live in town or Honolulu, that is where the bulk of the construction is going to be. We are still obviously in the pandemic, so a lot of companies have just been like kind of growing and expanding operations here to Hawaii. Amazon's moving here as well. So there's a lot of construction that's happening. And unfortunately, that's just creating more unnecessary traffic and more congestion. But just know that there is a ton of construction here on Oahu. All right, so the next biggest shock that I want to talk about is kind of one that everybody already knows about. I mean, it's Hawaii, it's inevitable, and that's the housing prices. Now, if you thought housing prices in Hawaii were high before, well, let me tell you guys, COVID has made them increase. The median home price here on Oahu is around $980,000. Yes, $980,000. So if you plan on moving here, I would highly recommend checking out areas that aren't as expensive. Some of the more expensive areas on Oahu are going to include Kailua, Honolulu, Waialae, Kahala, Hawaii Kai. Really anywhere that's around water, that is where it's going to be more expensive. Some of the least expensive areas on Oahu are going to include Mililani, which includes Mililani Town and Mauka, Kapolei, Waianae, Ewa Beach. And if you do want to actually check out the windward side of Oahu, I would really urge you to check out Kaneohe. Now, Kaneohe is still an amazing place, and there are still houses there that are well into the $1 million range, but you can find some really nice property and some really nice houses in Kaneohe that aren't above $800,000. But yeah, 800,000 for like a 3-2 is still kind of high. And for you individuals out there looking to rent prices are also outrageous here on Oahu as well. Just to give you kind of an idea, when we lived in Kailua, we were paying around $3,000. Yes, that was for a 1-1, but it was super nice and we loved it so much. So you're going to pay to rent here. Some of the least expensive areas to rent, believe it or not, are actually in town. So you can find like a really nice 1-1 for around like $2,200, 22 to I'd say like $2,800. And if you're looking to spend above that and get something a little bit nicer, I'd really urge you to check out Kaka'ako. Kaka'ako is an up and coming area in town. There's a lot of bars, there's a lot of restaurants, there's nightlife. It's close to the beach, it's close to Ala Moana, it's close to Ala Moana Beach Park. Everybody pretty much has a dog in Kaka'ako as well. It's a really nice area. There's grocery stores, there's so much to do there, but you are gonna pay a little bit more to live there. The next big shock I want to talk about is access to healthcare, something that a lot of people don't necessarily consider before they move here to Oahu. Now, before anybody decides to jump down my throat, I'm not saying that the healthcare system here in Hawaii is terrible or lacking in any way. There just really isn't too many options when it comes to healthcare. There's the Queens Hospital System and there is Hawaii Pacific Health as well. The Queens medical system is by far going to be the largest option here on Hawaii. They have hospitals pretty much on every single island, and that's gonna be the largest option that you have. Me personally, I had some health issues occur in 2019 and 2020 that sidelined me for a while, and my only option at that point, because we were smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, was to go to Straub, which is not in the Queens medical system. Now, I ended up needing a lot of work done. I had to go through some surgical procedures. I needed to have some x-rays done. One thing that really shocked me about the healthcare system here in Hawaii is even though you will have an operation performed here, that operation is going to end up basically technically taking place on the West Coast as well, right? So there's a lot of medical professionals that kind of bounce from Hawaii to California or Hawaii to Oregon or Hawaii to Washington. And so when you get your bill, you might see Dr. Tanaka, Oregon, or Dr. So-and-so in California, and you're like, well, I didn't have this procedure performed in California, or I didn't have this procedure performed in Oregon. Your doctor may also be on the West Coast as well. So, and another thing I wanted to hit on is since we are in the pandemic, there was a point in time where Hawaii had no beds available. Oahu literally had 0 beds. And so, like I said, I had my issues in 2020. There was a point where I ended up going to Queens and they were like, hey, like, we're gonna ask you to go somewhere else. Like, go to Straub, go to Palimomi, go somewhere where you will actually be seen. And even when I got to Straub told me, hey, like, we're running low on beds. So I basically had to sleep in a hallway for 2 straight days until I was able to get a hospital room. I really don't want that to be a deterrent for anybody. I know some great medical professionals here in the Hawaiian Islands. And in fact, if you're an individual that does work in healthcare, Hawaii is going to be an amazing place for you to live because, as I mentioned earlier, there really aren't as many doctors as you'd find in cities and states on the mainland. So this is a really great place to, kind of start your roots, start your career. You'll learn a lot. Obviously, there's a ton of people here in the Hawaiian Islands and you'll get to meet people from all over the world. So this is a really great place. The healthcare, don't let it scare you. But I do just want to be transparent and let you know that there aren't as many options that you'll find on the mainland. The next biggest shock I want to talk about is by far the most shocking thing on the list. It was the biggest shock for me when I moved here, and that's going to be the crime. When I think people think of Hawaii, they just think that this place is a paradise. Everybody's nice and there's no crime, there's no violence, there's no drama. There's all of that everywhere. But I also want you guys to know that yes, a lot of that stuff does exist here in Hawaii. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it's pretty rampant here in Hawaii. The crime is really bad. There's murders, there's Grand Theft Auto, there's larceny, there's corruption. That I just see all of it all the time. And I'm a person that doesn't watch the news, but I still somehow find a way to hear about the crime that happens here in Hawaii. You know, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like everywhere I go, let's say if I go to like a tourist site on the North Shore, if let's say I'm, you know, in Waikiki, like I see a lot of broken glass on the ground, like I see HPD everywhere. Like there's a lot of crime here in Hawaii, and I can't urge you guys enough to realize that when you come here. It shocked me, but it really shocked me because I didn't do my research prior about crime or about crime rates here in Hawaii. And so for me, it was a huge shock. You know, I hear so much about crime. We talk about it at work. I talk about it when I'm with my friends. You know, you have to keep your head on a swivel no matter where you live. But I just want you guys to know when you come to Hawaii, don't let your guard down, right? There's always somebody out there that's looking to screw up your life or screw over your day. So just stay vigilant and keep your head on a swivel, and I promise you, you'll be okay when you're here in Hawaii. But please just don't think that you're coming to a place that has no crime. Crime still exists here in Hawaii, and there's a ton of crime that happens here. It's almost kind of becoming a criminal's paradise, you know? And that's on both sides of the aisle. That's in terms of the corruption. There's just so much crime here in Hawaii. I can't say that enough. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is a pretty sensitive topic, and please, I'm really not trying to like start any drama. I really don't want to deter anybody. I'm just letting you know my experience, what I've witnessed, what I've seen, things that I've heard from people, things that I've heard from locals, things that I've heard from transplants, just things that happen here in Hawaii. And that thing is racism and discrimination. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm from South Florida, which is technically in the South. I've lived in Chicago, I've lived in California. I don't think I've ever experienced so much active discrimination and blatant racism in Hawaii. So quick story, I work in town, I work in tech, right? So I work with clients, I have customers, I work with people from all over the world. And I actually had a client who was super frustrated, super angry. For some reason, he just wanted to kill me. He called me the N-word. He was local, and I want to be clear. We ended up having to file a restraining order against this guy, but he called me the N-word. He told me that he would kill me if he ever saw me again. I didn't personally call HPD, but my company ended up calling HPD. This ended up being a hate crime. This guy was super violent, super angry for no reason. And I just am who I am. It was something that really drew me back, right? Because I've never been called that word before anywhere. And I told you, I'm from South Florida. I've lived in California. I've lived in Illinois. I've never been called that word anywhere. And this was something that happened when I first moved here. So I didn't let that like destroy my idea of Hawaii. I didn't let that destroy my experience here. That also wasn't the only time that I got called that. I've been called it a few times. There was one point where I was literally just walking through town and somebody screamed out their window like, you're an N-word, you know, you're this, you're that. And I couldn't believe it. I'm telling you, I've never experienced this anywhere. I've never experienced this anywhere. That's all I really want to talk about in terms of my experience, but I've also seen it dished out to transplants and to locals. And it's something that I want you guys to realize. You may or may not experience that here on Oahu, but it's just something that I had to hit on because I want to be as transparent and open with you guys about moving here. Is you may or may not experience some discrimination, some racism. It's just kind of inevitable. And it really hurts me to see that here in Hawaii because like I'm also indigenous as well, right? I'm Taino Indian, I'm Black, and I'm Hispanic. So it's just, it was really difficult to swallow. It was a really difficult pill to swallow because I was that kind of naive individual that was thinking like, oh man, I'm gonna leave the mainland, I'm gonna come here and I'm never gonna have to experience this. But it just so happens that I've experienced it and I've experienced it multiple times. And I really hope that you don't experience that. I don't think anybody should ever be subjected to that type of behavior. I just want to let you know that it is a scenario that you may encounter, unfortunately. The next biggest shock I want to discuss is the education system here in Hawaii. This is a really, really difficult subject to talk about because I value the kids, I value the youth. I had the opportunity to grow up in an education system that was world class. And when I came here to Hawaii, I really had no idea how bad it truly was. In my mind, the root of bad education obviously comes a major lack of funding. And that's definitely the biggest issue here in the Hawaiian Islands is, you know, the teachers and the students, they have kind of been given a raw deal. And what I mean by that is obviously tourism is going to be our main industry. A lot of that tourist money, unfortunately, doesn't get funneled into the education system. So these kids, they are obviously not being given the same opportunities that a kid on the mainland is given, and they're not being taught the same things. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not speaking on the entire education system as a whole, because there are some great schools here in Hawaii. But I do want you to know that a lot of those great schools are going to be private schools. St. Louis, Iolani, these schools that do cost a lot to attend. But just understand that when you're coming here with kids, really the best option for them from an education standpoint is to go to a private school. Now you're probably asking, Trey, how on earth do I know if I'm sending my kid to a good or bad school? Now you can obviously check Google, you can check school grades, and you can check school history. My best recommendation is to actually reach out to parents that have kids that go to these schools. You know, that's how I've learned about the education system here in Hawaii, here on Oahu, is just by talking to parents, right? So like I said, I work with individuals all throughout communities all over Hawaii. And so the number one thing I just hear is, man, like if I could afford it, I would send my kid to St. Louis, or, you know, I would send my kid to Iolani, or, you know, I would send my kid to Punahou. And so those are the private schools. Those are the top tier private schools. Like they are up there with some of the best private schools that you'll find on the mainland, or some of the best public schools that you'll find on the mainland. And it's a sad reality, right? Because, you know, I want to send this kid to public school. I would ideally like to send him to public school, knowing that he's going to get a fair shot, knowing that he's going to get a solid education. But sadly, that's just not the case here in Hawaii. And a lot of that has to do with a major lack of funding. The final thing I want to talk about in this video is grocery prices, restaurant prices, and shipping prices. Okay, so it comes as no surprise, groceries are really expensive here in Hawaii, and that's just simple economics. Like, we live here on an island. Somebody has to pay to get things from the mainland here to Hawaii, and the person that really ends up paying for it is the consumer. Now, just to give you an idea of what I mean by things are more expensive here, a gallon of milk, some eggs, steak, whatever you eat, chicken, all of that stuff is going to cost $5, $6, $7, $8 more, depending on what it is. And since there's shortages happening all over the world due to COVID and due to supply chain issues and whatnot, you're gonna pay even more than what you would have paid if there wasn't a pandemic happening. So, you know, things cost more. A night out at a restaurant costs more. One thing that actually doesn't cost more, which is pretty cool, is like a night at a bar, or a night out drinking with your buddies or whatnot. That actually costs about the same as what you'd find in California, Miami, New York, Chicago, pretty much anywhere. Like, it costs about the same here in Hawaii, which is pretty cool. Now, some things I would recommend is to check out stores like Costco. And another really great piece of advice that I'm gonna give you guys is, if you're not a Prime member, join Amazon Prime, become an Amazon Prime member, and shop at Whole Foods. Believe it or not, Whole Foods is one of the cheaper grocery options here on Oahu for a few reasons. So let's say your total is like $100, like you just spent $100 at Whole Foods. You get a discount on that $100 just by being a Prime member. And so there have been times where, like, pretty much every grocery visit, we save like $30 just by being a Prime member. Like, it's really cool. It's a really awesome perk. You will get your items a lot sooner by being a Prime member as well. And that's gonna lead me into my next point, the shipping. Same-day delivery obviously does not exist here on Oahu. 2-day delivery, you'll get that if you're lucky. Most things take around 3 to 5 business days to ship here to Hawaii. And unfortunately, there are just some items that don't even ship here to Hawaii. Like, I'm a photographer, I'm a videographer. There are a lot of batteries that just do not ship to Hawaii, and it's kind of annoying, but it's just one of those things where I have to like literally go through every battery and find out which company ships to Hawaii. So you just kind of got to spend a little bit more time to find things that actually ship to Hawaii, and you'll find that on Amazon, like you'll find that on eBay. Just a lot of companies don't want to pay that additional cost or that additional fee to ship things to the Hawaiian island. So it's kind of annoying. It's not a deal breaker, but I just want to let you guys know that that's just one of those things that you got to deal with. And so guys, that's gonna do it for me. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope that it can help anybody. Everybody's gonna have a different experience. That's the great thing about the human experience and our human existence. We all aren't the same. We're gonna experience different things. We're gonna interact with different people. We're gonna have different perspectives on life. And I appreciate that. Nobody appreciates that more than me. I hope this video can help you guys. Golden also says thank you, and he appreciates you guys as well. We're really excited for these next couple of weeks. We're heading to Kauai for Christmas, and then after that, we're heading over to the UK to spend time with this little guy's grandpa. And we're gonna bring you guys with us. We're gonna have a good time. So thank you guys for all the continued love support. Thank you. Mahalo for watching.